Something we're going to do throughout the NFL season, the good, the bad, and the maybe. Some things that I think are good and long-term good. Some things I think are bad and probably long-term bad. And then a good chunk of what we see on NFL Sundays is a bunch of maybes. Let's start with the good. I went into that Baltimore game just assuming you're going to lose because it's Kansas City. Mahomes hadn't lost Lamar. Mahomes, I don't think had lost in September. He hadn't thrown a pick in September. So like clockwork, you knew a pick was coming once they put that graphic up there. His September numbers are nuts. It was kind of like the Herbert red zone numbers where his career touchdowns versus 0 interceptions in the red zone. As soon as they put that graphic up in the Dallas game, you're like, oh, here comes the red zone pick. Nice win for Dallas, although the controversy towards the end. But this was, as I was taking my notes and I was crafting my thoughts on the outcome here, I kind of was crafting it as like, you know what, I respect the hell out of Baltimore's organization. They've got all these guys on IR. They've got this shuffling at offensive line. They've lost a couple bodies on the edge, and they still find a way to stay competitive. And look, Kansas City's just scoring at will, and it doesn't matter. Because if you think about like Harbaugh, who I think is obviously a really great coach, he's been there since 2008. They've had one losing season. And there was even a stretch a couple years ago where it felt like because it was getting stale that maybe there was a change to be made. And I kept thinking like, look, if you're in the building and you still feel like he's the right guy and he's a really good coach, there's nothing egregious enough to want to move on from him other than just wanting to be new. So whenever that was, and I don't think it was dire, but that happening and them not making a change, again, you're seeing the consistency and the foundation that he's put in place with this staff, and just they'll rotate guys in, they'll lose guys, and they still find a way to be competitive. And then on top of it all, they win this game. And after losing the first week against the Raiders in a really strange game where you're like, wait, is this good or is this just bad and it's entertaining as hell? I think it was the latter. This is perhaps a regular season win that you build something on here, and at least for Lamar to be able to say, hey, I finally got Mahomes. A couple other things from this game. The D-line from Kansas City got worked throughout. We'll get to them. There's a bad section, remember. The fourth down video that I kind of jokingly tweeted out after everybody else did, I was thinking about doing a different caption, but I couldn't really think of anything. Be like, no, it's not that succession's getting slower. It's that you don't understand it. Anyway, it's that the fourth down deal, is anybody watching any football? Everybody's going for it on fourth down because it's cool now. And my point with it wasn't that it wasn't uncool to go for it on fourth down. It's that if you're not built to get it on fourth down, stop doing it. Stop doing it in your own territory. Tennessee had a moment where it feels like they go for it all the time. They didn't, then they missed the kick, then they went for it, and then they didn't get it, and then they tied it because they didn't go for two. When Tennessee's always like, now they're just going to go for it. They're just going to go for it all the time. There's a lot of teams going for it on fourth down, and we're not sure yet. Hey, you can go for two. Are you good at it, though? You can go for it on fourth down, but have you been winning in the trenches all day long, or are you just going for it now because of what the book says? And Baltimore has been talked about as one of these franchises that's like, no, they have it all mapped out ahead of time and all these different things. Dude, they were going for it on fourth down no matter what. Harbaugh even told Burt Breer in the Monday Morning Quarterback last night and then into this morning, he goes, look, when we went into third down, we knew we had two plays here because at that point, Kansas City was going to get the ball back if you punt it. And to get the ball back and only need to get a field goal to win that game, you like Mahomes and the Chiefs' chances in that spot. So the video was fun. I still think in the aftermath of all the access that we're getting in some of these other sports, the NFL needs to find a way, if they want to step it up, which feels like a stale Hard Knocks. If you want to step that up, what you need to do is get everybody's audio on a file throughout the course of a game and then edit it all together to tell us the story of a 3.5-hour NFL game. And I want all of the audio and everybody to be mic'd up. Now, if you can't change that, you can't give us that because if you did it during the season, then you'd be giving away too much stuff. Just do it now and then give it to us in 3 years. Have it be this epic NFL production where we get everybody all the way they're all talking to each other, because when we get a taste of it, it's really fun and it's entertaining and we all like it. However, it wasn't like Lamar was going to say no, and Harbaugh had already decided that he was going to do it. Hell, we've got Nathan Peterman looking at the sidelines on 4th and 6 saying, let's go for it. Everybody wants to go for it all the time in the history of forever. If you're actually playing and you're a quarterback, you always think you can get it. Lamar got it. They ran it down their throats. Lamar, huge win for him after a tough start on a couple of those picks. He settled in, and they took advantage of a Chiefs defense. Another good is just watching Kyler Murray. The numbers are terrific. I know he had a couple picks against Minnesota. Minnesota missed the kick game. Could have gone either way. Arizona's 2-0 against what we feel like are two sort of playoff neighborhoody teams in Tennessee and Minnesota. We could be wrong about that later on, but I'm just telling you, if you want to have fun, watch a Kyler Murray game. Arm talent, I think Mahomes is the only guy that's ahead of him. And even Kingsbury had said, look, talent-wise, we're talking about a guy that was a top 10 pick in baseball and football, and Mahomes, who Kingsbury had in college, is maybe the only guy that I think he's in the same class with. I agree. I'm not going to say it's always as pretty. The decision part of Mahomes' game is still beyond where Murray's is. But remember, Murray was two different quarterbacks last season. This offense was two different offenses last season. Once the midway point, he had that shoulder injury. It was very clear watching it. So to see him healthy and another year of experience, the entertainment value out of Murray, if he's healthy all season long, it's one of the best watches you can have of the entire NFL schedule. Let's get to the bad. Zach Wilson, 4 picks, 5 on the season, tied with Trevor Lawrence, most picks in the NFL. And guess what? They're rookie quarterbacks. We have told you all summer and leading up, if you looked at Shil Kapadia's incredible work on the EPA numbers for rookie quarterbacks going back the last decade plus, if you were a first rounder and you played, your average score as any of those guys was Andy Dalton. You were Andy Dalton. And look, Andy Dalton was better at being Andy Dalton years ago than he is at being Andy Dalton right now. The Zach Wilson picks, the first 2 I thought were tipped. The third one is like, what the hell are you looking at? What are you looking at? And I think once you get that flustered and you're freaked out and you can't really read anything, and Belichick owns rookie QBs, it's going to end up being a long day. The Zach Wilson thing is always going to be one of these deals where, when Drew Brees says this guy could be the best of the class, you're like, wow, that's Drew Brees saying it. And as I've told you, I've had so many people that do this for a living. I'm talking to get paychecks from college and NFL teams. They're like, he's not any good. Zach Wilson isn't any good. It's 2 weeks into his career. I'm not saying that that's true. I did see a meme, though, guys, on social media, and it was like, how come Zach Wilson, he throws picks, but nobody says anything about Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow? Probably because those guys won national championships at major programs. Burrow looked pretty good and won a Heisman. And Zach Wilson played at a weak schedule in a weird year with BYU. That's probably, I don't know. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but that might be why. And by the way, when you're with the Jets or you're with those New York teams, you're just going to get trashed to a different level. And there was still a little bit more uncertainty about you from a non-name brand place, at least name brand, the level of the other 2 guys that the meme was complaining about. Staying on the bad topic, Kansas City's defense, as we came off of how good Baltimore's win was, Kansas City's defense last season was 22nd in weighted DVOA, so bottom third in the NFL. All right, just trust me, it's a bad number. Their red zone defense, and I'm talking strictly touchdowns allowed. So what percentage of red zone defensive possessions, what percentage of those do you allow touchdowns? They allowed touchdowns on 73% of red zone defensive possessions last season, worst in the NFL. And you know what? That number was so bad, they went 14-1 in Mahomes starts. Mahomes is the ultimate fixer, the eraser of all your problems. So when we look at this red zone defense, which now in this season has allowed 8 touchdowns and 8 red zone defensive possessions, 73% would be a huge improvement over where they are right now. The defense is bad. The defense wasn't good last year. But like I said, they went 14-1 in Mahomes starts. He can fix a fatal flaw. So when you hear people talk about the Chiefs D, which I don't know if it's going to get better anytime soon. It wasn't good last year. Fatal flaw, they don't have fatal flaws because basically nothing is fatal when Mahomes is there. One other part of yesterday, about an hour in, you're like, all right, Tua's out ribs. Would that start up the Deshaun Watson rumors to Miami? He's probably going to end up getting traded, guys, even with everything hanging on that story. Baker looked like he lost his left shoulder at some point, but he came back in a really weird game for Cleveland against Houston where they were in it. Tyrod's out. I think he's out in their next game. Carson Wentz went down, and then Dalton went down with a knee injury. And you're like, all right, what is going to happen here? I don't know. But that was a really rough stretch. It felt like an hour to 2 hours in because Wentz's injury there was at the end. But after the early slate of week 2 Sunday games are done, you had a good chunk of teams going, do we have somebody healthy to play the position? We'll finish with the maybes. After Jameis Winston has the game he had week 1 against Green Bay, and I even had Trent Dilfer on, I don't believe if you're a turnover machine, all of a sudden you're not a turnover machine. I just don't. I don't. Jason Kidd is one of the rare guys who couldn't shoot that figured out how to kind of shoot later on in his career. Not to say that non-shooters can't become better at shooting, but usually don't go from non-shooter to like, hey, this guy's actually a threat from the three-point line. That is rare. It doesn't happen. I think it's the same thing with quarterbacks. But when Jameis has the opening week, like, hey, Peyton's going to figure this out and all these different things, That was not the case week 2 against Carolina. Now, is it the Joe Brady factor, who was with New Orleans, LSU, and then knew the stuff that Peyton wanted to do? Darnold's looked better. I mean, is that part of this, where this game where everybody was looking forward to, and that they were more prepared against New Orleans because of the Brady part of this? I don't know. Coordinator, there's plenty. There's film of what stuff people do too. So I don't know if that's as big of a factor. But the Jameis reclamation storyline, that one's on hold right now, and there's a maybe on there. Ben Roethlisberger. This feels more like a bad than a maybe, but I'll share with you. The eyes tell me it's bad, and it has looked bad for 2 weeks. I went to some of the next gen stats, some of my favorites, where it's like yards plus or minus the sticks, right? So how often are you throwing short of the sticks or beyond the sticks of the first down marker? And I thought, well, Roethlisberger's got to be one of the worst in that category, right? Because when I saw, especially yesterday in that Raiders home loss, I'm going, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, everything seems to be a 4-yard kind of forward handoff, and you do the rest of the stuff. And Pittsburgh can't run the football, by the way, either. I think they're 30th in yards per carry right now. Roethlisberger's QBR is 26, but back to these other next-gen stats, because as I sifted through it, I was like, man, Roethlisberger isn't as bad in these as I thought, whether it's yards to stick or the intended air yards, which is just straight up like how long was the ball vertical from the line of scrimmage in the air, because all my favorites are at the top, meaning the bottom of these categories. Throwing to the sticks, who's throwing short of it? It's all my guys, Dalton, Cousins, Jimmy G. Roethlisberger's numbers surprisingly weren't that bad. But I'd imagine my eyes, or the numbers will catch up to my eyes in this one, because it's a continuation of what we saw last year. That great defense. Again, they lost Watt in this game. They lost Hayden. Nice win by the Raiders. But they don't have the defensive depth. They can't run the football. And some of the Roethlisberger stuff, even though the numbers ended up not being as bad as I thought they'd be when I sorted them this morning, I think they're going to get worse. We finish this segment with numbers and then film room. A quick number for you. This is from Hembo at ESPN. He tweeted this out. The highest drive score percentage in the last 2 seasons, NFL average, is 40%. Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. Number 3 is Josh Allen. Number 4 is Aaron Rodgers. Number 5 is Tom Brady. You left someone out. That's right. Derek Carr is second in the percentage of time drives lead to a score. Derek Carr at 48%. He leads the league with 817 yards right now. Nobody else has 700. Kyler Murray's second at 689. Max Crosby, their defensive end, is number 1 in defensive pressures 2 weeks in. I don't know if the Raiders are going to be awesome. You remember the Raider Gruden ride? Like, hey, where are all the Gruden jokes? Oh, don't worry. The Gruden jokes are coming at the end of the season. So I don't know if that cycle is going to happen again. We kind of pick and choose. So, Rudy, we've talked about this. Like Kingsbury, if you don't like Kingsbury, you're just waiting for that kick to go through yesterday. And there's going to be some bad Arizona loss where something happens. It's like, this Kingsbury isn't good. Gruden's that times a million because of all the money that he signed for. So, like, you've already made your mind up on Gruden. You'll never change your mind. But so far with Derek Carr, like, there's some numbers in there where I don't know that I've never thought he was a top 5 guy. I don't think I've ever had him in my top 10. There's a lot of numbers happening right now where you're like, do you guys realize how special these Derek Carr things are? But nobody's going to give Gruden credit, because then they would have to change their mind. As we've established, the rule on this podcast, no one changes their mind. All right, last thing, film room observation. I know everybody's upset about the taunting calls, but this is a little bit like the single digit thing. If you're not a Pro Bowl alternate, I just don't think you should be, at the very least, all Pro Bowl alternate, which is half the quarterbacks in the NFL each season. You shouldn't be allowed to have a single digit number. I could be wrong on that one. I need to know who you are. I need to be like, oh yeah, that's a single digit guy. That makes sense. But now the single digits are so cool. Like, I love when the NFL's like, hey, you want to be cool this year? Let's let these guys finally have single digits. Everybody will realize how down we are. The streets will recognize that. Let's have single digits. The taunting part, though, is gone the other way, where people are upset about the taunting. I don't know. My other deal with it, like Reed for Seattle on that deep ball, the A.J. Brown, where it was just overthrown and Brown couldn't catch it, and then Reed stood over him like he did something and taunted the shit out of him. I was okay with that taunting. I was. Like, that kind of taunting where it's like you didn't even do anything, and he might have been a single-digit guy. Let's see if we can get IT on that. And it's a Seattle corner, which that's not exactly their strong suit at this point. I was okay with that taunting. And the final thing is the shovel passes. my weekend of 23 hours of watching football was littered with everybody thinking they can now do a shovel pass because Kansas City did it. Most of you can't do it. Now that everybody's maybe keying on it a little bit more or looking for it or not making a movement until the ball is out, these shovel passes need to be banned unless you're Kansas City. That's week 2.